The days that followed felt like I was walking a tightrope, one misstep away from everything crashing down. Carol had made it clear that this wasn't over, and every call, every message, every confrontation felt like a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. But I wasn't about to let her win. I had made a promise to myself, to Emma and Jack. I had chosen to fight, and now there was no turning back. I spent countless nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what the next move would be. I couldn't predict when or how Carol would strike next. But I knew one thing for sure, she would. The woman didn't know how to lose, and I was starting to fear that she'd never stop until she tore my family apart. But what terrified me more was the toll it was taking on me. The emotional exhaustion was like a weight on my chest, and no matter how hard I tried to shake it off, it lingered. I hadn't realized how much I had internalized this battle until it started affecting every part of my life. I was snapping at Emma and Jack for no reason, losing my temper over the smallest things. It felt like I was losing control of everything, including myself. One afternoon, while I was working, Jack came into the room with a drawing in his hand. It was a picture of me, standing tall, surrounded by a shield made of hearts. I stared at it for a long time, trying to fight back the tears. He didn't understand what was happening, but he somehow sensed that I needed to be strong. He saw me as his protector, and in that moment, I realized just how deeply my actions would affect them, now and in the future. I couldn't let them down. I couldn't be the person who caved under pressure, who let the toxic manipulations of one person destroy everything I had worked for. Carol could threaten me all she wanted, but she would never take away my power to choose. And I wasn't about to let her take my children from me. The next time Carol called, I was ready. There would be no more back and forth, no more empty threats. This time, I would confront her head on. "Hello?" I answered, my voice firm. "Do you think I'm going to let you get away with this?" Carol's voice was cold, dripping with venom. "I will make sure you regret every decision you've made." I took a steadying breath. "You've been trying to break me for weeks, but I'm not breaking. I'm done letting you control my life. This ends now." Carol laughed bitterly, the sound sharp and jagged. "You think you've won? You think you're in control? You have no idea what you're up against." I felt a surge of adrenaline. It was time to stop pretending I was afraid. I know exactly what I'm up against. But what you don't understand is that I'm not afraid of you anymore. I'm not afraid of losing you or your manipulation. I've already lost too much, and I'm done letting you take any more." The silence on the other end was deafening. For a moment, I wondered if she had hung up. But then her voice came through again, quieter this time. "You'll regret this. I'll make sure of it." I hung up before she could say anything else. My hands were shaking, but I knew I had made the right decision. I had finally drawn the line in the sand. I wasn't going to let her control my life anymore. I wasn't going to let her ruin what little peace I had left. The next few weeks were a blur. Carol didn't give up. She called, she messaged, she sent letters. But I didn't respond. I had cut her off completely, and though it was difficult, it was also liberating. The weight of her presence in my life was finally starting to lift. I could breathe again. But as much as I wanted to believe that everything would magically get better, I knew it wouldn't. The emotional scars of this battle would take time to heal. And I would never forget how far Carol was willing to go to destroy me. But I had fought back, and I had won. I focused on rebuilding what was important, the relationship I had with Emma and Jack. I worked hard to make them feel safe, to make them understand that they were loved, that they were enough. I spent more time with them, helping them with their schoolwork, going on little outings, and just being present. I was trying to be the parent they deserved, the parent I wanted to be. There were days when I still doubted myself. When I wondered if I had made the right choices, if I had handled things in the best way. But when I looked at my children, when I saw the trust in their eyes, I knew that I had done what I had to do. I had fought for them, for us, and that made all the difference. One evening, after tucking Emma and Jack into bed, I sat on the couch with a glass of wine in my hand, staring at the quiet darkness outside. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel the constant pressure on my chest. I wasn't at war anymore. The battle was over. But that didn't mean the fight was won completely. I knew Carol wouldn't stay quiet forever. But for now, at least, we had peace. And for the first time in a long time, I believed that peace could last. I had taken my stand, and it wasn't just for me, it was for my family, for our future. And nothing, not even Carol's venomous threats, could take that away. As the days went on, the weight of my family's expectations continued to press down on me. I'd already begun to feel the strain in my relationship with James and my father, but now it was becoming more than just emotional, it was financial. The constant demands, the subtle insinuations that I should be doing more, the guilt trips, it all started to blur together in a suffocating haze. I couldn't think clearly anymore. I was juggling too much, and something had to give. The tipping point came one afternoon when I received a call from my father. He'd been distant lately, but today his voice was unusually harsh. "Why haven't you let James move into the beach house yet?" he asked, sounding more like a reprimand than a question. "I told you, Dad, I'm not comfortable with it," I replied, my patience wearing thin. "I don't have the resources to keep bailing him out. He needs to start figuring things out on his own." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the heavy breathing, the frustration building. Then, in a tone that chilled me to the bone, my father said, "You know, it's not just about you anymore. This is family. You can't just think about yourself." Those words hit me like a slap. My own father, the man who had always preached about doing what was right for the family, was now pressuring me to give up my own security, my own home, for the sake of James. A man who had never once shown any real responsibility. "I'm doing everything I can, Dad," I snapped, suddenly feeling a surge of anger. "I'm the one holding everything together. I'm the one who's always there for everyone else. But no one's ever there for me when I need them." For a moment, there was nothing but silence. And then came the guilt trip, as expected. "You know, I had high hopes for you. You're the oldest, Emily. You're supposed to be setting an example. And yet, here you are, turning your back on family. What kind of person does that make you?" His words stung, but I refused to let them break me. I was done. I was done being the one who had to carry the burden, who had to be the fixer for everyone else's problems. I had my own family to take care of. I had my son, Noah, to think about. The next few weeks were a blur of tension. My father's calls became more frequent, each one more demanding than the last. Every conversation turned into a lecture about how I needed to be more selfless, how I had an obligation to take care of my family. James, of course, was still pushing for the beach house, and every time he called, I could hear the bitterness in his voice. "You know, I'm really starting to think you don't care about me," he'd say, always with that hint of accusation. "If you really wanted to help, you'd let me stay at the house. You'd be there for me like you promised." I had no idea where this sense of entitlement was coming from. James had never once helped me in any meaningful way. Every time he needed something, I was there. But when the roles were reversed, he was nowhere to be found. It was like he expected me to be his personal safety net, to cover for him every time he messed up. And when I finally said no, he acted like I was the one who was in the wrong. But the real turning point came when I received an email from Rebecca, my stepmother. She had always been passive-aggressive, but this message was a direct attack. She made it clear that she was disappointed in me. She criticized me for being too focused on my own family and not doing enough to help James. The message was filled with veiled threats, insinuating that if I didn't step up, I would lose their respect, if not their affection altogether. The audacity of it all left me speechless. I had been giving everything I had, emotionally, financially, and yet here they were, demanding more, as if what I was doing was never enough. It was in that moment that I realized how deeply I had been taken for granted. It wasn't just about helping my family anymore, it was about them expecting me to sacrifice my happiness, my well-being, my entire life for their convenience. And the worst part was that I had allowed it. I had let the pressure of their demands wear me down, bit by bit, until I no longer recognized myself. I wasn't just Emily anymore. I was the dependable one, the problem solver, the one who always said yes. And the more I gave, the more they expected. But something inside me started to shift. I began to see things clearly. I wasn't just a pawn in their game. I was a person, with my own needs, my own boundaries. And I needed to start standing up for myself. It wasn't easy. Standing up to my family felt like an act of betrayal. I had always been the one to put others first, to be there for them no matter what. But I realized that I couldn't keep doing it anymore, not if it meant sacrificing my own happiness, my own peace of mind. I needed to take control of my life. I needed to set boundaries, even if it meant disappointing the people I had spent my whole life trying to please. It wasn't about being selfish, it was about self-preservation. And so, I made a decision. I decided that I would no longer allow my family to manipulate me. I wasn't going to let them guilt me into sacrificing everything for their sake. It was time for me to take care of myself, to put my needs first for once. But as I soon realized, standing up for yourself wasn't as simple as saying no. There were consequences to every decision, and I was about to find out just how far my family was willing to go to get what they wanted. The moment I made the decision to stand up for myself, I knew things wouldn't be easy. I couldn't expect my family to just accept my boundaries without some kind of backlash. After all, they had been used to me saying yes for so long that they wouldn't understand why I was suddenly saying no. What I didn't anticipate was how far they would go to manipulate me into changing my mind. It all started with my father. After that phone call where he had guilted me into questioning my commitment to family, I thought things might cool off. Maybe he'd accept that I had my reasons. But no. Instead, the guilt trip ramped up. I was at work one morning when my phone rang. It was Dad. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before answering, knowing full well that this call wouldn't be about checking in or offering any words of support. "Emily," he said, his voice strained and cold. "I don't know what happened to you. I don't know where my daughter went. But I'll tell you this, family comes first. You've always been so focused on your little family that you've forgotten about us." I closed my eyes, feeling a wave of frustration crash over me. "Dad, I told you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm not going to keep helping James if he doesn't help himself. I'm not running a charity. You don't get it, do you?" He snapped, his voice raising now. "James is struggling. He's your brother. You're supposed to help him. It's your job." "My job?" I repeated, my anger rising. "I'm not his caretaker, Dad. I can't keep sacrificing everything for him." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my father's sharp breath on the other end, as if he was trying to control his temper. Then, he dropped the bombshell. "If you won't help him, then maybe you don't belong here anymore." Those words hit harder than anything he had ever said to me. I knew what he meant. He was suggesting that I was no longer part of the family, that I was somehow abandoning them by not doing exactly what they expected. For a moment, I felt the sting of betrayal. The idea of being pushed out by my own father seemed so foreign, so wrong. But I had to remind myself, I was not the one betraying anyone. I wasn't the one asking for more than I could give. "I'm doing what's best for me, and for Noah," I replied, my voice unwavering. "If you can't accept that, then maybe it's you who needs to look at what you're asking from me." The line went silent again. I heard the soft click of him hanging up on the other end, and I let out a shaky breath, relieved that the conversation was over. But in the back of my mind, a cold knot was forming. This wasn't the last time I'd hear those words from him. Things escalated quickly from there. That afternoon, I received a text from Rebecca, my stepmother. The message was long and dripping with passive-aggressive language. "It's so sad to see you acting this way, Emily. I really thought you'd be different. But I guess we're all learning who you really are." My heart sank as I read the words. This wasn't just about my decision to stand up for myself, it was about the way they were twisting the situation to make me feel like I was the villain. Rebecca's manipulation was subtle, but powerful. She wanted to make me feel guilty for not doing what they wanted. She wanted me to question my own instincts. But I couldn't fall for it. Not again. I didn't have the luxury of giving in to guilt and shame. I had to stay strong. And then came James. It was the following evening when he called me, his voice tinged with something between anger and desperation. "Emily," he said, "I don't understand why you're doing this. You know how hard things have been for me. Why won't you help me out like you used to? What happened to being there for family?" I had to take a deep breath before answering. "James, I've helped you every time. But you have to start taking responsibility for your own life. I can't keep enabling you." "Enabling?" His tone was incredulous. "You're supposed to help me, not leave me out here to fail." It felt like I was speaking to a child, not a grown man. I could hear his frustration, but it wasn't my responsibility to solve his problems. He needed to grow up, take control, and stop using me as a crutch. "You're capable of doing this on your own, James," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm not abandoning you. I'm giving you the tough love you need." But I could tell from the silence that he didn't see it that way. And when he finally spoke, his voice was colder than before. "If that's how you want to play it, fine," he spat. "But don't come crawling back to me when your little world falls apart." I hung up the phone, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. It was clear now, James wasn't going to change. And neither was my father or Rebecca. I had become the enemy in their eyes, all because I chose to prioritize my own well-being over their expectations. It hurt more than I could put into words, but I knew it was the right thing to do. The next few weeks were an emotional roller coaster. I still received calls from my father, each one more hostile than the last. Rebecca's texts came daily, each more passive-aggressive than the one before. It was a game to them now, twisting my words, making me feel guilty for standing up for myself. But every time they tried to manipulate me, I felt more and more certain that I was on the right path. But as the distance between us grew, I began to feel a strange sense of freedom. I had taken back control of my life. I wasn't bound by the constant pressure to please others. I could breathe. I could finally focus on Noah, on building a life that was mine and mine alone. Still, the tension didn't go away. The pressure from my family was relentless. They had made their feelings clear. I was the one at fault, the one who had ruined everything. But I no longer cared. I had made my choice, and now I had to live with it. There was no turning back. I was learning to stand on my own, and no matter what they said or did, I wasn't going to let them bring me down. I had my boundaries, and I was determined to keep them, even if it meant losing the people I had once thought I couldn't live without. I had reached a point where it seemed like every call, every message, every moment of silence from my family was a test of my resolve. I had made the decision to prioritize myself, to stop enabling their unhealthy dynamics, and yet it felt as if they were pulling harder than ever to drag me back into their web. It was exhausting, emotionally draining, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was somehow fighting a losing battle. But I couldn't afford to back down now, not when everything I had worked for, everything I believed in, was on the line. The calls from my dad became a daily occurrence, and each conversation followed the same pattern. He would guilt-trip me into questioning myself, and when that didn't work, he'd attack my character, saying I was selfish, heartless, and cold. The manipulation was relentless. I tried to stay calm, tried to remind myself that I was doing the right thing, but every conversation left me feeling hollow. Then came the message from Rebecca that sent everything into overdrive. I was sitting at home with Noah, watching him play in the living room, when my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a text from her. "You've completely cut us off. You think you're better than us now. I guess this is who you really are, Emily. This is what happens when you choose your family over your own blood." I read it 3 times, each word sinking deeper and deeper into me. She wasn't even trying to pretend anymore. This wasn't about understanding or healing. This was about trying to force me to admit that I was wrong for wanting boundaries, for wanting my own life outside of their chaos. I felt the sharp sting of betrayal as if I had been stabbed in the back by the very people who should have been my support system. But I couldn't afford to give in to their games anymore. I couldn't afford to let their guilt trips make me feel like I was the one at fault. Still, the words gnawed at me, and I found myself questioning if I was doing the right thing. Was I really better off cutting ties with the people I had grown up with? Could I live with the knowledge that I might never have the kind of relationship I had hoped for with them again? As if on cue, my phone rang again. It was my father. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the emotional barrage that was sure to come. I knew what to expect, but that didn't make it easier to bear. "Emily, you've made your choice," he said in a tone I didn't recognize, cold, almost accusatory. I tried to be understanding. I really did. "But now you're forcing my hand. You think I'm going to let you just walk away from this family without facing the consequences?" I bit my lip, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I'm not walking away, Dad. I'm just asking for respect. I'm asking for the space to live my own life without being constantly manipulated and guilted into doing things I don't want to do." "You call this respect?" he barked, his voice shaking with anger. "You think you're the only one who matters here? You've turned your back on all of us. You're choosing your new life over the family who has always been there for you." "I'm not turning my back on you," I said, my voice growing steadier despite the whirlwind of emotions in my chest. "I'm just setting boundaries. And if you can't accept that, then maybe it's you who needs to change, not me." The silence that followed was suffocating. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, trying to figure out how to manipulate me back into submission. But I was done. I wasn't going to play his games anymore. Finally, he spoke, his voice a mix of hurt and anger. "You're making a huge mistake, Emily. A huge mistake. And you'll regret this." "I'm not the one making mistakes, Dad," I replied, my voice sharp. "I'm finally standing up for myself. I'm choosing to live my life the way I see fit. And if you can't accept that, then I guess that's your choice." The line went dead. I sat there for a moment, holding the phone in my hand, feeling a cold weight settle in my chest. I had done it. I had stood up to my father, but at what cost? Was this the end of any hope of reconciliation? Was my decision to put myself first going to haunt me forever? Days passed, and I continued to grapple with the fallout. My relationship with my family was deteriorating faster than I could have imagined. I received no further texts from Rebecca, no more calls from my father. It was as if they had gone silent, but I knew this wasn't peace. This was their way of making me feel invisible, of pretending like I didn't exist anymore. But I couldn't let myself get sucked into their silence. I had made the choice to stop letting their guilt control me. I had set boundaries, and I had to stick to them, no matter how much it hurt. Noah, my little boy, continued to be the light in my life. His laughter filled the house, a constant reminder that I was doing the right thing for him. I wanted him to grow up knowing that he didn't have to live his life to meet anyone else's expectations. I wanted him to understand that standing up for yourself was a strength, not a weakness. I began to focus more on my work, on building my YouTube channel and finding ways to make our lives better without depending on the toxic pull of my family. Every day felt like a new challenge, but also a new opportunity to redefine who I was outside of the expectations my family had placed on me. And then, out of nowhere, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from my brother James. "You were right. I've been stupid. I should have listened to you. But I'm sorry. Can we talk?" For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Was this a trick? Was he just trying to get me to drop my guard again? I had to be careful. I thought about it for a while, wondering if this was truly the beginning of him taking responsibility for his life, or if it was just another manipulation tactic. But something told me that this was different. He was finally acknowledging the truth. I took a deep breath before typing my reply. "Let's talk. But on my terms." I hit send, feeling a small sense of relief. Perhaps, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new, a healthier relationship built on mutual respect. The tension had reached its breaking point. The emotional toll of standing my ground had been immense, but in that moment, I felt like I had turned a corner. The consequences were real, but so were the rewards of taking control of my own life. And for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. It's funny how the most unexpected things can sometimes push us toward growth. I never imagined that standing up for myself, setting boundaries with my own family, would lead to such a roller coaster of emotions. Yet, here I was, having made the hardest decision of my life, and for the first time, I was beginning to feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. The text from James had left me shaken, yet hopeful. Could this really be the moment he saw things from my perspective? After everything we had been through, everything I had endured for years, I never thought I'd see the day when one of my family members would own up to their actions. I decided to take him up on his offer. I couldn't keep running from the past forever. It had been a while since we had any kind of meaningful conversation. The last time I'd spoken to him, I had been in a place of deep hurt, struggling to make sense of my family's behavior. But now, I wasn't the same person. I had built a new life for myself, one where I called the shots. I arranged to meet James at a local coffee shop, somewhere public and neutral. I needed to ensure that I was in control of the situation. Noah stayed with his grandmother for a few hours, giving me the space to focus on what was about to unfold. As I sat down at the table, I tried to push away the knots of anxiety tightening in my stomach. James walked in, looking as he always did, like nothing had ever changed. But there was something different about him today. His posture was slouched, and his eyes were soft, not the usual guarded expression I was used to seeing from him. "Hey, Em," he greeted me quietly, sitting across from me. I took a deep breath, exhaling slowly. This wasn't going to be easy. "Hey, James," I replied. "I wasn't sure if I should even meet with you. I still don't know if I can trust you." He nodded, his face etched with regret. "I understand. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't want to. But I messed up, Em. I've been thinking about everything, and I realized how wrong I was." I crossed my arms, not sure whether I was ready to hear an apology that might just be a way to ease his own guilt. "What are you really sorry for, James?" He paused, looking away as if struggling to find the right words. "I'm sorry for not being there for you when you needed me. I'm sorry for taking sides, for enabling Dad and Rebecca, and for not seeing what was really going on. I know I hurt you, and I can't change that. But I want to make things right." I blinked, the words hitting me harder than I anticipated. I hadn't expected him to own up to so much. But was this real? Or was he just saying what he thought I wanted to hear? "I don't know if you can make things right," I said softly, my voice cracking slightly. "I don't even know if I can ever trust any of you again. But this is a start." James nodded, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just wanted you to know that I'm not the same person I was before. I'm done with the manipulation and the toxic behavior. I know it's going to take time, but I'm willing to do the work if you'll let me." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in years. For all the pain we had shared, for all the times he had chosen to turn a blind eye, maybe this was the change I had been waiting for. Maybe it wasn't about waiting for everything to magically fix itself, but about taking small steps, one conversation at a time, toward healing. "I don't know if I can let you back in the way I used to," I said, my heart heavy with the weight of those words. "But I'm willing to try. Just, don't make promises you can't keep." James smiled, a small, genuine smile that made something shift inside of me. "I won't. I promise." As the weeks passed, things started to change in ways I hadn't anticipated. James and I began talking more, rebuilding a relationship I had thought was lost. But it wasn't just with him. The distance between me and my father seemed to grow even wider. My dad had sent a few more texts, each one more cutting than the last, but they didn't carry the same weight anymore. The guilt he tried to impose on me didn't land. It wasn't that I was completely over the pain, but I had learned to detach myself from his manipulations. It wasn't easy, though. There were still moments where I second-guessed my decisions. The silence from Rebecca was deafening, and I still longed for her to understand. But I couldn't keep waiting for people who weren't ready to meet me halfway. My healing was mine to own. Noah became my anchor through it all. As I watched him grow and laugh, I realized just how much I needed to be the kind of role model he could look up to. I didn't want him to inherit the brokenness that had plagued our family for so long. I wanted him to know that it was okay to walk away from toxic relationships and that standing up for yourself was not just a necessity, it was a strength. I spent more time focusing on building my YouTube channel, pouring my energy into something that was mine, something that wasn't defined by my past. Slowly, I began to rebuild my confidence. And just when I thought I couldn't do it anymore, I found a new sense of purpose. I started creating content that spoke to people who had been through similar struggles, people who felt unheard, unseen, and unheard. I poured my soul into every video, knowing that, no matter what happened, I was finally living for me. One evening, as I was getting ready to film another video, my phone buzzed. It was from James again. He'd sent me a message saying he had been working through his own therapy and had started to truly reflect on the years we had spent apart. It was a simple message, but it was enough to show me that sometimes the road to healing isn't a straight line. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's painful, but there's progress in the small moments. We're not perfect, but we're trying. And that's what counts. I smiled at my phone, and for the first time in years, I felt a genuine sense of peace. Maybe things would never be the way they used to be. Maybe my relationship with my family would never be what I had dreamed of. But it was mine to define, and I was ready to shape it into something healthier, something that reflected who I had become. No matter what, I was no longer afraid to stand alone.